A gute Woche, everyone, and a guten Yud Aleph Nissen. And before we begin to go over a little bit from the Farbrengen, it's Yud Aleph Nissen and Peschem V'Brocha. We will join together with all the thousands and tens of thousands of Yidden throughout the world to wish the Rebbe Ishnas Hatzloche, La'arichus Yomim V'Shonim Toivos. The Rebbe should be gesund, begashmiyas, and the Rebbe should have a lot of satisfaction and nachas from all his chassidim and from all his mekushorim and from all of Klal Yisrael throughout the world. And all the Rebbe's wishes and all the Rebbe's desires should all be fulfilled easily and smoothly without any problems or without any inconveniences. Now we will try and go into the Farbrengen. The Rebbe began the Farbrengen this afternoon that today is Shabbos HaGodel. But besides it being Shabbos HaGodel today, it is the original Shabbos HaGodel as it was in the year when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim. Because the Alter Rebbe tells us in Shulchan Aruch that the year the Yidden left Mitzrayim on a Thursday. And the Shabbos before, which was then Yud Nissen, like today it is Yud Nissen, the Rebbe performed outstanding miracles. Lemake Mitzrayim b'fchoreim. Amongst the Mitzrayim itself began a war, began a battle. And the Mitzrayim and the Pchorim of Mitzrayim were involved in a battle amongst themselves. Because it was the Pchorim, the firstborns of Mitzrayim, they were afraid of what was going to happen. They heard of Makas Pchoris. So they began insisting that the Mitzrayim should release the Yidden. The Mitzrayim, on the other hand, did not want. So this led to Lemake Mitzrayim b'fchoreim. And being that this was a ness, so this ness is commemorated every year by us celebrating Shabbos HaGodel. And the Alter Rebbe right away in the Shulchan Aruch adds on, actually, why should it be on Shabbos? This should be always on Yud Nissen, on the 10th of Nissen, just like it was then. And not always does the 10th of Nissen come out to be on a Shabbos. It happens to be this year, it's the same kviyas like it was when the Yidden left Mitzrayim. But we can have Yud Nissen on other dates, and still we do not stress anything special regarding Yud Nissen, but we stress Shabbos HaGodel. And the Alter Rebbe gives the answer that the reason for it is that being that Miriam passed away on Yud Nissen, so the Chachamim did not want to set something special for that day. However, it remained on the Shabbos before Pesach. So the Shabbos before Pesach is always called Shabbos HaGodel. But the mere fact, says the Rebbe right away at the beginning of the Sikha, that this year, it is like the year that the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, and the Pasuk tells us, Ki meitzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu niflois, that the wonders, that the Nisim which the Rebbe will perform when he will take us out of this Golus, the Gula Asidah, the Gula through Mashiach, will be similar. Ki meitzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim, so it's not. But says this right away is an opportune time for the Inyan of Geula, being that the dates are now exactly like it was by Yitzias Mitzrayim. So Memele, and we say that Yitzias Mitzrayim Nisim, the Nisim that will be when the Rebbe will take us out of this Golus, will have a similarity to the Nisim of Yitzias Mitzrayim. So right away, it's an opportune time to demand that now should be an Inyan of Geula, the Rebbe should take us out of Golus. But being that this Shabbos is called Shabbos HaGodel, the truth is, says the Rebbe, every Shabbos is Godel. Every Shabbos. Especially when we look at Shabbos in comparison to Yom Tov. So we know that if we want to evaluate what is more severe, let us look at the einish, at the punishment one gets when he transgresses Shabbos, or when he transgresses Yom Tov. So we see that the punishment for Shabbos is a much more strict than the punishment for transgressing Yom Tov. So this right away shows us that Shabbos bichlal is an inyan of Godel, even in comparison to Yom Tov. And here we say that this Shabbos, which comes before Pesach, is called Shabbos HaGodel. It's Godel among Shabbosim. So therefore we have to say that this has an impact on the entire Shabbos. That all the inyanim that are involved on this Shabbos, everything that relates to this Shabbos, everything, says the Rebbe, is in the format of Godel. Being that the title of the Shabbos is Shabbos HaGodel, so everything is negadlus in a great way this Shabbos. Also taking in consideration the fact that today is Yud Nisan, and we know that the number of Yud is also a number of special significance. Yud is a number of shleimus. It's the completion of the cycle, of the singular cycle. And then we come into Yud. And Yud relates to Kedusha. Kedusha relates to 10. So therefore today we have a combination. We have the inyan of Yud. And we also have the inyan, the fact that it's Shabbos HaGodel, so it's a very special day. It's the Shabbos HaGodel in the original way of Shabbos HaGodel. And when we realize the greatness of Yud, that Yud is a special number, also a number of special significance. And together with it is Shabbos HaGodel, so it's a very unique day. The Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch, as we mentioned earlier, gives the reason why do we celebrate Shabbos HaGodel? As we mentioned earlier, because of Lamake Mitzrayim B'Freireim, because of the war that took place amongst the Mitzrim and their own Preirim. The truth is, says the Rebbe, that in Svarim it's brought many other reasons for Shabbos HaGodel. Many reasons. However, the Alter Rebbe does not bring it. And the truth is that even though we are to say that Shulchan Aruch is a halacha sefer, and halacha does not get involved in all the detailed reasons which we have for Shabbos HaGodel, but nonetheless, we do find in halacha many times that at least two reasons are brought for an inyan. And there's another very obvious inyan that has to do with Shabbos HaGodel, which is also stressed a lot in Svarim, and nonetheless the Alter Rebbe ignores it when it comes to Shulchan Aruch. And that is the fact that being that on Yud Nisan, 4 days before Yudalad Nisan, that is the day when the Yidden all had to prepare the Korban Pesach. The Rebbe told them that they should take the Korban Pesachs beforehand and tie them to the legs of their beds. And the pasuk says, "Mishchu yedeichem," withdraw your hands. What's the pshat? Withdraw your hands. Withdraw your hands from Avodah Zarah. Because until then the Yidden were involved in Avodah Zarah, and now they should get close to Pesach. And this is something which is of a very great significance. Actually, this brings out how this day the Yidden parted from Avodah Zarah. So why should we bring a reason that has no shaychus to Yidden? A reason that deals with Goyim, something which the Goyim amongst themselves had a battle, and we say that for this reason we celebrate Shabbos HaGodel. There's an inyan in Shabbos HaGodel that's related directly to Yidden, and that's the fact that Yidden withdrew from having any shaychus to Avodah Zarah and began preparing the Korban Pesach, which was a Korban to the Eibishter. So the Rebbe brought out that when the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, at this stage, they did not have the status of Yidden yet. It is first by Yitzias Mitzrayim, when it happened that the Eibishter came, Lokachas loy goy mikerev goy, that the Eibishter came to take a nation from amidst nations. The Eibishter chose Klal Yisrael from amongst all the nations. And here, even before Yidden are a nation, we are told the gewaltige Zach. We see how special the Eibishter treated them, and what type of an influence they had, even on Goyim. Even at this point, they are not considered Bnei Yisrael yet. They're not in the category of Yidden. Nonetheless, even at such a time, Yidden led to it that because of them, so zayin an inyan, there should be an inyan of Lomake Mitzrayim B'Freireim, that the Mitzrim and the Preirim amongst themselves should have a war, should be involved in a battle. And this was all because of, we'll call them Yidden, but because of the Bnei Yisrael who were about to leave Mitzrayim. And this had and the Yidden at that time had already an impact on the Mitzrim as well. as well. What does this show us? It shows us that even before they were Yidden, the Rebishter did things because of them, and the effect that they had on Bnei Noach, even before they were chosen to be Yidden. So that is why this is the reason which the Alter Rebbe chooses to stress the greatness of Yidden even before they became Yidden. That because of them, things were happening and things were transpiring, all because of this nation which the Rebishter was about then to choose as his favorite nation. And the Rebbe mentioned also an interesting thing, that in Sfarim it's brought that the Shabbos before every Yontif is called Godel, as well as the Shabbos before Sukkot and the Shabbos before Shavuos. They're all special Shabbos, and when a Shabbos comes before the Yontif, a Shabbos we know gives bracha into the entire week. This Shabbos is a very special Shabbos. So really Sfarim say that a Shabbos before every Yontif is called the Shabbos HaGodel. But nonetheless, says the Rebbe, the Shabbos before Pesach is a special Shabbos HaGadol. Why? Because in Halacha, in Shulchan Aruch, we only find regarding Pesach, the Shabbos before Pesach. Regarding other Yomim Tovim, it's brought in Svarim, but in Halacha it's not mentioned. And here it's to such an extent that there's a special siman in the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, a special siman regarding to the details of Shabbos HaGadol. So Mamela, the Shabbos HaGadol which we are celebrating today is a much greater Shabbos HaGadol than the Shabbos HaGadol before Shavuos and before Sukkot. So Rebbe continued the Farbrengen that this day, in other words, to Yud Aleph, we will also be, there's another Inyan which has a shaykhis, for those who are following the learning of Rambam, we will be completing one sefer of Rambam and we'll be entering into another sefer of Rambam. We will be completing the sefer of Hafla'ah, and we will be entering the sefer of Zroyim that deals with all the halachas of planting. The Rebbe says that to see, this came like, this kind of an introduction, that the completion of Sefer Hafla'ah and the beginning of Sefer Zroyim is very suitable to a birthday. Why? Because what's the inyan of a birthday? The inyan of a birthday is that an neshama, how great an neshama is. In other words, a neshama could be titled Hafla'ah. Hafla'ah means wonders and great. That's a neshama. And when a neshama comes down into this world to fulfill its mission in this world, the neshama is going through the process of zroyim. Neshama is being planted into this world. This hafla'adik neshama, this great and outstanding neshama, is being implanted here in this world, and to go through this world and to bring getlachkeit down into this world and to bring and fulfill its mission, why the Rebishter has sent the neshama into this world. So this right away shows us a shaykhis of the completion of Sefer Hafla'ah and the beginning of Sefer Zroyim to the concept of birthday. But in the Siyam itself, the Rebbe explained, the Rambam at the end of Hilchas Eirach Nochromin, the Rambam brings out how a person should never part with all of his possessions. And the Rambam speaks very, very strong words against the person that does that. And the most a person should contribute should be no more than a fifth. Al yefazer yesa mechoimish. And the proper way of attitude should be that a person should be mechalkel dvorov b'mishpat. The Rambam uses an expression, he should feed his words with justice. In other words, a person should do things accordingly. He shouldn't just do wild things without reason. He shouldn't. Everything should be within a realm of control. And the Rambam continues that this is the attitude the person should take. Bein b'divrei Torah, bein b'divrei olam. This is something which one should do regarding Torah, and even in worldly aspects, he should also develop such type of an approach that everything should be done, calculated properly. And the same when it comes to give tzedakah, he should not just take and give up all his nechasim and just give him away all his possessions. But we know there's an inyan of giving ma'aser, and at the most, al yefazer yoso mechoimish, he should not spend more than a fifth. when it comes to giving tzedakah. So the Rebbe brought out this Indian and explained it. He says, we find the Alter Rebbe tells us the greatness of tzedakah, and the Alter Rebbe brings out that everything which one has, he will give for his soul. And from the Alter Rebbe we see that there is an Indian in giving tzedakah, even when it comes to more than a fifth. Because the Alter Rebbe brings out that the person today is, the Avodah today is in tzedakah, and he's acquiring chaye nafshi. This is by giving tzedakah, he's actually acquiring life by giving tzedakah. And therefore, tzedakah is leading to forgiveness on all chatoyim, and therefore the Alter Rebbe brings out at length that a person can give even more than a fifth. Because what will not a person give to save his own life? How does this correspond to what the Rambam says, that a person shouldn't give more than a chaimish? So the Rebbe brought it out with a mashal, brought another Indian, and by understanding the other Indian we can understand this as well. The Rebbe spoke out about tshuva. We find that tshuva is something, on one hand is an Indian of kol yom of b'tshuva. A person could be all his life in a level of tshuva. On the other hand, we find that tshuva has its special moments. This is an Indian of Yom Kippur, there are the days before Yom Kippur and so forth. Was meint das? It means that there are certain days when we put emphasis on tshuva. On the other hand, tshuva is something which is welcome at all times. But it doesn't mean that all year round there's emphasis put on tshuva. Doesn't mean that the Avodah Hashem all year round is in tshuva. It comes to certain times, to certain moments in a person's life when there is a call for a stress, for an emphasis on Avodah Hashem. Other than that, Avodah Hashem has its time. The same when we're talking, says the Rebbe here, regarding this Inyan. The regular derech and Avodah is the way the Rambam tells us. That a person gives tzedakah, gives ma'aser. If he wants to be more generous, then he's mefazer mamayna, he's spending his money, then al yifazer yosem mechaimish, he should not spread out, he should not give more than a fifth. However, there are at special times when there's a special emphasis and there's a special call for it. That is when it's koilan shaloish yitin ba'ad nafshoy, whatever he only has, a person gives to save his life, but this does not mean that this is a constant, ongoing derech. Just like when we're saying how great tshuva is, and how great it is for a person that you should always do tshuva. But nonetheless, we do not say that there's an emphasis that 365 days in the year, there's a stress and emphasis on Avodah Tshuva. The same says the Rebbe. The derech regila is mechalkel dvarav b'mishpat. As the Rambam says, a person feeds his words and controls his words with a mishpat, with a judgment, with a righteousness. In other words, with a certain control, and this attitude has to be, as the Rambam just says, bein b'divrei Torah and bein b'divrei elam. But together with it, there are certain times when there's a need for an extra, for koilan shelo ishita and bad nafshe, that comes at special times. The Rebbe continued also into the new kapitel, which we are beginning to say tomorrow, and that is Kapitel Peiches. And Kapitel Peiches comes as a continuation to Kapitel Peizayin, and there are those that tomorrow they will stop saying Kapitel Peizayin and begin Kapitel Peiches. And Kapitel Peiches begins with Shir Mizmor Livnei Koirach, Lamenatzeach al Machlois Lanois Maskil Lahimon Oizrochi. So the Rebbe brought out, first of all, we see that there's mention here about the Bnei Koirach. And the Bnei Koirach, says the Rebbe, we had him in last year's Kapitel as well, Kapitel Peizayin, begins with the Bnei Koirach. But Bnei Koirach, says the Rebbe, is something which relates to Avodas HaTshuva. As we all know what happened to the sons of Korach, the children of Korach, after what happened to Korach and all those that followed him, we find in Chazarah that an opening was made specially for the children of Korach, and they rose again after being swallowed by the earth together with their father and everybody else, and that was through the strength of tshuva, through the koyach of tshuva which they did. And here the pasuk begins, Shir Mizmoyer Livnei Korach. What's the taich Shir and what's the taich Mizmoyer? The Rebbe says Shir is bepeh and Mizmoyer is bekeli. Shir means how one sings orally through his mouth. Mizmoyer is through instruments. And says the Rebbe, really there's a deeper expression from a person when it comes from his mouth. A person really expresses himself orally through his mouth. What's the inyan of using instruments? The inyan of using instruments is this assists him, this helps him to bring out yet stronger what he's trying to bring out. And here we say, side the inyan from Shir, and side the inyan from Mizmor, both of these inyanim are being combined, and it's being combined Lamenatseach. What is Lamenatseach? Lamenatseach is from the expression of Nitzochin, of a victory. In other words, it's a perik that deals that all the tefillos will be fulfilled, and we'll have a victory. As the pasuk goes on, Tovei lefanecha tfilosi. The tefillah will come lefanecha, to you, Rabbeinu Shalom. Directly to you. The Rebbe put a lot of emphasis on these words. The Rebbe says we find, for example, we say in davening, Yale, V'yovoi, V'yagia. I think he mentioned that there are 7 expressions which all underline how the tefillah should reach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. First the tefillah has its aliyah, then it comes, and then it reaches, and then it's being seen, Yala, V'yavi, V'yagia, V'yeroa, V'yerotza, V'yishama. Here the pasuk says, Taveh lefanecha. The tefillah comes directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Taveh lefanecha tfilosi. And the Rebbe continues, Hatei oznacha l'rinosi. And the Rebbe will put his ear, in other words, it's the inyan of Shmiyah. The Rebbe will listen l'rinosi to my rino, which is also to my tefillah. And the Rebbe explained these psukim and the perik in the kapitel. And the Rebbe concluded also talking about the greatness of the number of Yud Aleph, of 11. Because how come we know that 10 is a number of shleimus, as we mentioned earlier, and 10 is a number of kedusha. And when we're, especially in Chassidus, the way it's explained in Chassidus at length, when we're talking about Esa Sfiras, we always relate to 10. The Sfiras are limited in 10 Sfiras. And we say 10 Sfiras, specifically 10. There's an expression of Kabbalah which is often quoted in Chassidus. Eser v'loi teisha, eser v'loi yachad osar. 10 and not 9, and 10 and not 11. However, when we're talking about the number 11, we brought it out, Chassidus, it's brought out that there is Eiros and there is Kalim. And all this is within the realm of Esesfiras. When we're talking about the number of 11, the number of 11 is something which is higher than Eiros and Kalim. And even when we're using these terminologies of higher than Eiros and Kalim, it's just that we're using terminology that we should understand it, so we say it's higher than Eiros and Kalim, but really it's higher than the words that we are using to describe this. In other words, the Rebbe was bringing out how the number of Yud Aleph is a number of special significance. And we understand, obviously, the shaykhs is that this relates to the day of Yud Aleph Nisan. And it was an in-depth inyan in the Haskalah of Chassidus, how the Rebbe brought out, the greatness of Yud Aleph. The Rebbe concluded that this has a shaykhs to everybody, those that will begin saying the kapitel tomorrow, and those that don't say the kapitel. There's an inyan of Avas Yisrael. So because of Avas Yisrael, we know that Kol Yisrael are Raven Zelazeh, all Yidden carry responsibility one for another. So really this inyan affects each and every one of Klal Yisrael, how we are bringing out the Inyan of Shir and the Inyan of Mizmer, and ultimately how it's Tovei Lefonechot Tfilosi, that it comes and reaches directly to the Rabbeinu Shlomo. A kosher and freilich and Pesach.